Right, let's get straight into it and get under the skin of a really common but often misunderstood group of conditions. We're talking about papulosquamous diseases, and believe me, they're a lot more than just a simple rash.
You know, when you see a red, scaly patch on someone's skin, it's easy to jump to conclusions, isn't it? But what we're about to find out is that the story behind that one symptom, well, it's way more complex and varied than you'd probably ever think.
So, what's in a name? Well, in this case, everything. The name itself gives us two massive clues. Papules, those are basically just raised bumps, and squamous, that refers to the flaky scales you see on the surface. It's that exact combination, the bumps and the scales, that ties this whole family of conditions together.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the big picture, what these diseases are all about. Then we're going to zoom right in on psoriasis as our main example. We'll look at what it is, what kicks it off, and how it's treated. After that, we'll quickly touch on a couple of other key conditions before pulling it all back together to see why getting a proper diagnosis is just so important.
All right, first things first, let's just get a sense of how big this family of conditions actually is.
And wow, the list is surprisingly long, isn't it? You've got the ones you've probably heard of, like psoriasis and eczema. But then you've got things like fungal infections and even secondary syphilis on there. This really hammers home the point that a simple red scaly patch is never quite as simple as it looks.
Okay, so to really get to grips with this group, let's do a proper deep dive into the most common one of the lot, psoriasis. So what exactly is it? Well, psoriasis is a chronic inflammatory disease, and it's genetic. It's famous for its ups and downs. Periods where it flares up, we call that exacerbation, and periods where it calms down, or remission. The classic look, you're talking about these really well-defined pink patches or plaques with a sort of silvery scale on top. You'll most often find them on the elbows, knees, scalp, and the lower back.
Right, let's dig into the why and the how of it all. What actually causes psoriasis to flare up? And what different shapes and forms can it take?
The cause of psoriasis can be broken down into three neat steps. First, you've got the predisposition. Basically, it's in your genes. Second is the actual internal mechanism, the pathogenesis. Now, this is pretty wild. Your skin cell turnover, which should take about 60 days, speeds up to just 10. Insane, right? And third, you have provocation. That's the external stuff that can trigger a flare-up. And what are those triggers? Well, it could be anything from physical trauma to the skin, there's a name for that, the Koebner phenomenon, to an infection like a nasty bout of strep throat. But it can also be things like emotional stress, certain drugs like beta blockers, hormonal shifts, and even lifestyle choices like drinking alcohol and smoking. And it's not just one single thing either. Plaque psoriasis is the one you see most often. But then you've got guttate psoriasis, which looks like little drops and often shows up in kids after an infection. It can hit your nails. In fact, it does in up to 70% of patients. It can appear in skin folds. And in some really rare, severe cases, you get pustular psoriasis, which is a genuine medical emergency. Oh, and in about 5% of cases, it can even lead to arthritis.
So, with all that complexity, how on earth do you go about treating and managing it?
Broadly speaking, treatments fall into two main camps. For psoriasis that's fairly localized, you've got topical treatments, creams and ointments you put directly on the skin. We're talking things like coal tar, steroids, or a vitamin D-based one called calcipotriol. But if the psoriasis is really extensive, say affecting over 20% of the body, you need systemic treatments that work on the whole body. That's when drugs like methotrexate or cyclosporine come into play. But that's not all. There are other really important approaches, like light therapy. Ultraviolet B, or UVB, can be incredibly effective. Then there's something called PUVA therapy, which is a clever combo of a drug called Sorolene and UVA light. And sometimes you even combine methods, like in the Gokerman's treatment, which uses both coal tar and UVB. Okay, let's zoom back out from our deep dive on psoriasis for a moment and meet a couple of other key players in this Papulosqamous family. First up, we have pityriasis rosea, and this one has a really unique story. It usually kicks off with one single larger patch, which gets called the Herald patch. Then, about 5 to 10 days later, a much more widespread rash appears, often in what's known as a Christmas tree pattern on the back. But here's the good news. It almost always clears up completely on its own in about 6 to 8 weeks. Next on our list is lichen planus. Now, this is another chronic inflammatory one, and it's known for a very, very memorable set of characteristics.
And here they are, the famous 5 Ps, a great way to remember it. The patches are pruritic, which means they're really itchy, purple in color, polygonal, meaning many-sided, plain, so they're flat-topped, and they show up as papules or plaques. If you look closely, you might also see these fine white lines on the surface, and those are called Wickham's striae.
So, we've just looked at 3 really different conditions that all live under the same papulosqamous umbrella. And that brings us perfectly to our final and most crucial point, seeing the whole picture. Just look at this slide. It lays out the challenge perfectly, doesn't it? You've got all these different conditions. Eczema, psoriasis, lichen planus, even a fungal infection like tinea. They can all look like a red, scaly lesion at first glance. And yeah, each one has its own telltale signs, but spotting the difference, well, that takes a properly trained eye. So this is the real takeaway, isn't it? With so much overlap between conditions that can range from being completely harmless and self-limiting to chronic or even being a sign of a serious infection, how can you ever be truly sure what you're dealing with? The bottom line is, you can't. A professional diagnosis isn't just a good idea, it is the only answer. It's the only way to be certain you're getting the right treatment and the right advice.